Hey friends, welcome back to the Business of Writing podcast from Live, Write, Publish. I'm Jocelyn, a full-time freelancer with over 20 years of experience working in media. And today we're tackling something that I think all creatives struggle with at some point. And it's something that I wish someone had talked to me about way earlier in my freelance career. And that is how to stop thinking like a broke freelancer. Freelance poverty thinking is a real thing. So we're going to talk about what it is, what it looks like, and some strategies to shift your mindset and use your energy more productively so you can get better clients and bigger projects. In case you want more details than we discuss here in this podcast, this episode is an extension of this week's blog post over on livewritepublish.com. It's called How to Stop Thinking Like a Broke Freelancer, which is pretty appropriate. And you'll find a link in the show description if you want to read more. So let's get into it. First of all, what the heck am I talking about when I say broke freelancer? Let's define this first. When I'm talking about poverty thinking and freelancing, I'm talking about when you're operating from a constant place of scarcity and reactivity. So you're in that sort of scramble to survive. You're not really building anything sustainable or something that you can carry on for a long period of time. And how this looks is you'll take any job, no matter how little it pays. You might not have confidence to charge more for your work, and you probably aren't saying no to low-paying gigs that you probably should be saying no to. And we've all been there. I definitely have been there, and I'm going to share an example in just a second. But here are some signs that you might be operating from a broke freelancer mindset. The first one is you may take on low-paying projects because you're scared to say no, or you're scared, oh, this might be the only project I get and there won't be more work coming, and just sort of that sort of panic mentality. Second, you avoid raising your rates because you think your clients will leave you. And that could be a whole episode in and of itself. But rate setting, it can be a very tricky thing because I know a lot of times people think, oh, well, the market won't support that, or, oh, I don't have enough experience to charge more. But the fact is, you can work with your rates and finesse them and work your way up. You don't have to take, bottom of the barrel rates, especially if you have some experience. And finally, a lot of times people equate being busy with being successful, but being busy is just busy. If there's no bigger strategy or plan behind it, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. And so a lot of times that can contribute to a sort of poverty mindset of, oh, well, I'm not going to have any money unless I'm constantly busy all the time, working all night, working weekends, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the ways that this compares to being a more strategic freelancer is when you start thinking about, strategy and bigger picture, you start thinking about building your business over the long term. So you start looking at it from, okay, how can I build a sustainable and steady source of income that builds on my experiences, it builds on my knowledge base, it also values my time more. So when you start thinking more like a strategic business owner, freelancer, you start choosing projects and clients that are more aligned with your interests and your goals, and you start building processes around what you do so that it supports your longevity in your career, and it makes sure that you have staying power, you're not burning out, you have a plan for the long run, and you can actually do this for a long period of time. So before I start talking about some strategies to shift your mindset, let me tell you about why I decided to talk about this. Back when I was in grad school, I was completely buried in the content mill grind. And if you're not familiar with content mills, these were online platforms where you could log in and you would grab assignments like, top 10 dog breeds for families, or 8 ways to unclog a drain, or, whatever keywords were trending in the moment. These websites would just have lists and lists of titles. And you would go in and write, 300 to 400 word articles that were SEO optimized. And you would get maybe $30 a post. That was pretty standard back when I was doing that. And it's the stuff that they're using AI to write today. I don't really know if there are any content mills that still exist anymore because, AI has pretty much wiped that out. But it was a thing. And obviously it isn't hard work. I could easily crank out 2 or 3 articles an hour if I picked titles on the same topic. So I could just research it once, and then I could churn out 5 or 6 articles on that subject over the course of a couple of hours. And on paper, this seems really great because you're making $60 to $90 an hour, and it sounds like fantastic money, and wow. But in reality, it's completely unsustainable because, first of all, I don't know if you've ever tried to write 5 articles on how to unclog a drain. It's really difficult. It burns you out. It's extremely soul crushing. After 2 or 3 hours, you're just done. You don't want to do it anymore. So I could only manage to knock out, even on a really great day, maybe 4 or 5 hours, of doing that, because it was just, it really got old very quickly. And even worse than that is some days you could log in and there wouldn't be any work at all. So some weeks you might make $800 and other weeks you might make $90. It just really fluctuated a lot. So it was a complete crapshoot. It was very frustrating. Even though you had that illusion of, oh, I'm getting paid every week, this is great. It really wasn't great. And even worse than all of that, the absolute worst part was at that time, I really had no idea that I could be doing something else or that I could be doing better. I had no idea, what freelancing was. I knew some journalists and I had heard of stringers who, write for newspapers. But I knew obviously that there were freelance magazine writers. I'd heard of that, but I had no idea how to break into that world. I didn't know anyone who was successfully doing that. And forget about, copywriting or private client work or ghostwriting or any of those things, because I didn't know anyone who had done that and was doing that successfully. So I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know how to get into it. I was just sort of stuck, spinning my wheels, trying to make a little extra money. And sort of my point in telling the story is that if you don't have a frame of reference for what could be different, it's really, really easy to get stuck in a sort of, broke mentality when you're freelancing and thinking like, oh, well, there's no way I can do this. There's no way I can make a living. It's so hard, So let me leave you with a couple of tips here for breaking out of that mentality. The first one is, don't assume that what you see right now is all there is. Get curious, go talk to other writers, go look on forums where writers hang out. I've got a lot of stuff on my website as well. Ask questions, look behind the curtain, see how people are actually making freelancing work. I remember midway through my grad program, I met some magazine writers. And that really helped a lot because I realized, oh, okay, people are actually doing this. It is attainable. It's something that there are steps, there are systems you can learn. You can learn how to find editors. You can learn how to pitch them. You can learn how to understand, what evergreen content is. It's a learnable system. And once you kind of get to that step, it makes everything a lot easier. So one action step that I would invite you to do if you want to do more freelancing and sort of break out of a poverty mentality and sort of try to find higher paying projects is to identify 3 types of clients that you would love to write for or work with. It could be, 3 nonprofits that you'd really love to work with, or 3 magazines you'd like to write for, or, 3 companies that you would really love to contribute some work to. Identify these places and then see what kind of writing they do, what kind of writing they need, and how you could potentially fill that need. And also, if it's a magazine, you can go and look at their writer's guidelines and you can see like, oh, okay, well, they pay X amount for, whatever kind of content. So make a list and have that list as sort of like a dream list, because it'll give you something to aspire to, something to work toward. And then as you start to make progress toward that, you can start crossing those off your list, and it feels pretty good and it gives you confidence. And it will pivot you out of that mindset. And speaking of pivoting, let's talk about how to actually make that mental shift. There are a few things you can do to sort of shift out of survival mode and into, freelance business owner mode. And, I'm going to give you a couple of things here, and you might want to grab a pen or maybe open a document to jot down some thoughts as we work through this. And the first thing I would invite you to do is ask yourself, what does a sustainable freelancing life actually look like for me? And I mean, like, really write it down. What do you want your day to look like? What kind of projects do you want to be working on? Do you want to be working, let's say, for example, nonprofits. I went through a period of my career where I helped a lot of nonprofits with their grants and their grant narratives and helping them with fundraising efforts. So if that's something that you're interested in, really look at, okay, what are the things I want to be doing? What are the skills I need to have in order to get those kind of gigs? And who are the people that I really need to reach out to make connections? Next, take a look at what you're currently doing. So what gigs do you currently work on? What projects are you currently doing? What things are draining you? What things do you want to let go of? And also, what things are energizing you? Who are the people that you love working with? What are the projects that really get you excited? What kind of work really makes you love what you do? Over time, you'll be able to focus more on those kind of projects and sort of feel more comfortable letting go of the things that are draining or that, aren't really sustainable for your life. And finally, be sure to schedule time to rest and recoup and daydream and brainstorm. I know sometimes we, especially if we're freelancing, we don't always put a lot of, we don't always prioritize that, but it's really important to take time off and make sure that you're not constantly chasing projects and dollars, because rest is really important. It's not a luxury. It's actually part of your business strategy, at least in my opinion. When I was first starting out and I was like trying to do the grind and the hustle and doing that whole thing, I actually didn't do as much as I do now that I'm a little bit more cautious with my energy and I take more time off and I'm more strategic about what I say yes to. When you're in that hustle and grind and you're really just like, working all night, working on the weekend, 7 days a week, like sometimes there is a season for doing that, but you don't have to be constantly hustling. And sometimes your best ideas and your best connections come during your downtime when you're just relaxing and maybe you're surfing the net and you find a place that you think, oh, I would really love to work with them, or oh, that's, an interesting part of, whatever industry you're working in or writing in. That's something that you hadn't seen before. It's scheduling your downtime is just as important as scheduling in your work time. And a lot of times when we're in that sort of cycle of thinking like oh my gosh, I'm going to be broke if I don't work 24/7. I have to say yes to everything. Like that is counterproductive. So shifting your mentality is about shifting into building something that lasts and taking your time with that. And let me give another example really quick about why it's important to, calm your mind, take that time, and how that will help you build the life that you want to build. Back when I was a newspaper editor, I was working 60 hours a week. I was really stressed out. And when I finally left and went into more of the corporate copywriting world, I had a chance to really take a step back. I didn't have to work so many hours. I could relax a little bit more. But a friend of mine who was still an editor was still struggling. We had both, risen up the ranks together. We were both editors together. We spent a lot of our times complaining together about the stress, the management headaches, all the things that come with running a newsroom. So she was still in it, but I had gotten out. And she was still in that grind of managing, daily news. And it's just, if you've been in it, it can be stressful. It can be exciting, but it can also be stressful. So one day after I'd been freelancing for a while, and I was sort of already into my new rhythm and my new, sort of my new mental state, we were having lunch, and, she was talking about things, which was great. And she was really exasperated. And she said, I just can't take it anymore, because her personal life was suffering. She had, a lot of things going on, and it was all stuff that I could relate to, because it was the same stuff that I had going on. And I looked at her, and I wasn't, I just kind of said off the cuff, wasn't really trying to make a statement or anything. I just said, you don't have to do this. There are other careers. And she just had this look come over her face, like, well, duh, of course. Like, why didn't I think of that? It seems so obvious. And after a second, she was like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. And she told me later that it was something just clicked with her, the way that I said it, I think. And she didn't run out and quit her job. Okay, I don't recommend that. I've been laid off, so I understand sometimes you can't help it. You're just in the situation you're in. But I never recommend that you just like quit your job just because you feel like it. But so she didn't quit right away, and neither did I when I left. We were both strategic about setting up, freelancing work and making sure that we had other opportunities lined up. But within a year, she had started freelancing full time. She had left a high stress job. She moved to a town that she had always wanted to live in, and she was like loving her life, and everything was going great, and I was super excited for her. So it is possible. I say that to say that it is possible. You can shift your mindset, even if it seems like you're in a grind. And I would leave you with these two thoughts about, sort of shifting out of that poverty grind mindset. And the first is, sometimes we just need to give ourselves permission to imagine something better. So I would invite you to ask yourself if there are any ways that you're holding yourself back with a limited worldview or a limited view of what's possible. Because a lot of times we just don't see the bigger picture, and there are ways to get where we're trying to go without having to struggle so much. And second, I would invite you to ask yourself, how would you act and what would you do if you truly believed that you could thrive in a different way? And for me, when I started reframing how I thought about things and started thinking of things in a way of, what if I could thrive, running my own business and doing my own thing? What if I didn't have to rely on, the whims of whatever media company, with everything that's shifted so much? What if I could take control of my career? And once you make that shift and you start thinking like, oh, okay, I am, the CEO of my life, basically. I know a lot of people say that, and it's kind of funny, but it's true. How would I act differently? What would I do? And no matter where you're starting out today, you don't have to be trapped in a sort of like broke creative freelance mentality. And I know, before I was a newspaper editor, I worked in film. So I understand, of a lot of friends who are, actors and filmmakers and photographers and creatives, basically. And I think that a lot of times our training, we have great training in, arts and creative things, but not in, business skills or understanding that, yes, we can take a vacation once in a while, and we can afford to pay for things. And, we can be strategic with our decisions, and we can think like business owners and make that shift. Even if you're just starting out, you have the capacity to, make a shift to making more strategic decisions about your career. Because in the end, it is about more than just money. It's about valuing yourself, it's about respecting your energy, and it's about creating something sustainable that you can live with long term. So if this information resonated with you and you took something from it, please head over to livewritepublish.com. There's a full blog post with sort of more detailed information there. It's called How to Stop Thinking Like a Broke Freelancer, which I say sort of jokingly, but I think we've all been there, and we all go through that phase. So if you are in that phase now, and if you are there, no worries, no worries. You can shift into more strategic thinking and build something that is more sustainable income-wise over the long term. And if you're ready to start building a freelance business that actually supports your life, consider subscribing to Live, Write, Publish, and stay tuned for more advice and tips. And until next time, keep writing and enjoy creating a life that you love.